and welcome back to the newsroom of BIXPO 2019. I'm Ji Wan, and with me this afternoon is Michael Ashcroft, Manager for Power and Utilities at KPMG. Michael Ashcroft, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So I suppose this is your first time visiting Korea?
It is actually, yes.
Yeah, so far?
So far, loving it. Yeah.
Loving it. So that means this is your very first BIXPO experience.
It is my first BIXPO.
So how is it going?
I'm really impressed with it actually. It's very large, it's very exciting. Compared to other conferences I've been to, it's buzzing in here. It's fantastic.
So, I mean, considering your background, I assume that you have attended a wide range of expositions and exhibitions in the energy space. So, what differentiates BIXPO?
It's the scale of it, I think. It feels like there's a lot going on in here. So normally in conferences you walk around and it's a little bit quiet, whereas here I'm pushing my way through people to get to see the exhibitions.
Wonderful.
One really big difference actually is I've seen a bunch of school kids walking around, and I've never seen that before in any other conference. Seeing a line of school children waiting to look at an exhibition is wonderful to see.
I see. So, I mean, this is still the second day, and we have one more day to go, but what has sort of stood out the most so far?
So, I'm going to say two things, if that's okay. So, I really enjoyed the opening ceremony yesterday with the KEPCO CEO talking about the importance of this event as part of their wider focus on the transformation of the energy system. It really felt like he believed what he was saying, and that really matters to me when I come to an event like this to see that he believes his own message. And I really see it reflected here at BIXPO. I also really enjoyed this morning's Energy Leaders Summit. Just the other talks were amazing, and it's so well choreographed as well. It's been a wonderful, smooth experience.
And I believe your talk was amazing as well.
Thank you very much. I can't say that though. But
So, I mean, not all of our viewers had a pleasure of attending your lecture or presentation. So would you please summarize the content perhaps?
Sure. So it was about digital transformation in energy, and I focused on the role of data in enabling certain possible features, particularly around electric vehicles. So I don't know how many electric vehicles you have here in Korea, but in the future you're going to have to manage how they charge, when they charge, and the kind of behavior of the drivers and interacting with the power system. So I was talking through one possible feature and hoping that would connect with the audience as to how they should now think about how they run their organizations and how they adapt to that future.
I suppose the EV market is sort of booming at the moment because Mercedes-Benz came out with a e-vehicle recently, and that has garnered a lot of attention in the Korean market. So I think they still have a long way to go, but it's getting there. Also, as the manager of power and utilities, what type of opportunities are you looking for at BIXPO in specific and also in Korea overall?
So within KPMG we have quite a wide focus. Also we have partner firms here in Korea as well. I'm really interested in the regulation space as well. So in the UK we have regulated network companies, regulated companies. So understanding how the regulations work and what the opportunities are within that kind of framework is very interesting. We also work in strategy, so helping big companies adapt to the energy system transformation. So looking at how we can assist them in navigating that change in a way that works for them and works for the wider change goals, should we put it that way.
So what type of opportunities do you think Korean companies have if they want to advance into the UK?
Into the UK? Oh, interesting. So one interesting thing there is that National Grid, our equivalent of KEPCO, if you like, has set an ambition to be able to operate our power system with zero carbon by 2025. So in 6 years, 100% renewable for a period of time on the system.
That's ambitious.
It is very ambitious. I'm quite proud that we have that target in the UK. But I think anything that can help us achieve that ambition, so it could be technical, of how do you actually manage a system with zero synchronous plant, I think is a very interesting question.
And once again, that's very ambitious, and I'm wondering what the British government had to do to sort of make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody is determined to achieve that goal.
So I think the UK has often been seen as a leader in this space. So we were the first, I think, to set climate goals into law. We've just upgraded that law now, so we're aiming to be net zero by 2050, I think. So net zero emissions. That kind of landscape has really encouraged companies to step up. But it was National Grid itself that went out and said, we are committing to 2025 zero carbon operation goal. So I think it's just a wider landscape of support.
So I guess that's something that suppliers and business operators in the energy space can kind of take the idea from if they're operating in the United States, because the regulatory environment is slightly shaky at the moment, to say the least. So, as you know, the theme of BIXPO 2019 is digital platform, and everything is being sort of migrated onto the digital platform at the moment. So how has that unfolded in the United Kingdom?
Sure. So I think we're seeing a transition in the way that companies connect to the system, essentially. So in the old days, we had a small number of large connections to the system. Now we're moving to a distributed world where we have a very large number of small connections. So into that space are stepping in what we call aggregators, who are taking the place of the in-between position, allowing everyone to connect to them, and then they facilitate the wider connection to the, say, national grid and the distribution companies. And that's all taking place on digital platforms.
I mean, on that note, I think there are a lot of people sort of saying that, oh, you know what, we can go off grid completely. So we don't have to make this massive investment in the infrastructure and the transmission system. We can forget about that. So what do you say to those people?
I say good luck. It's definitely possible, and there are some instances where you might prefer to do that. So microgrids in more remote locations, or where you have a certain constraints in the local environment. But I would say we have well-used, robust, working transmission and distribution systems. Why not connect to that? It seems to work perfectly well. What is useful, though, is adding, say, solar power to your roof. And you can connect back to the grid and sell your power back. That's, I think, a more useful way of going more independent. So you can still have the independence of your own power generation, but still have the connection to the grid when you need it.
So that they can ensure that energy sort of reliability.
Exactly.
All right. So as we usher in this era of digital transformation, things around us are being hyper-connected. So do you think BIXPO 2019 sort of fairly represents and sufficiently demonstrates the super connected, hyper-connected society we are living in today?
I think it does. I think BIXPO has done the best job I've seen of really pushing this point of a system of systems. So normally when I go to conferences like this, it's power sector only. You might get power and heat, for example, energy. But I've really seen here a combination of different systems. My talk was about transport as well, also kind of societal systems. And the fact that the KPMG CEO highlighted that in his very opening talk this morning at the Energy Leaders Summit really highlights to me that it's something that KPMG take very seriously.
So I suppose digital transformation means market transformation.
Yes.
So when we are going through this kind of market transformation, I think it's important for us to have all the key stakeholders on the exact same page. Those key stakeholders such as regulators, policymakers, and utility companies like KPMG, and also consumers and prosumers as well. So how can we ensure that? How can we involve everybody sort of?
Yeah. It's definitely a journey you have to go on that's been happening quite a lot in the UK, and I'm very proud of it, but the idea of stakeholders come first. So most big decisions now go through consultations, panel discussion, expert advisory groups, that kind of thing. And the more that you can reach out to the right people at the right time and take them on the right kind of process, the more likely you are to come to an answer that is the right answer and that everyone buys into. The danger is that you'll go off on your own and do something and then realize that someone didn't want you to do that, or it doesn't work the right way.
The global energy industry is going through this mega shift at the moment.
Yes.
So what type of energy paradigm shift have you witnessed in the United Kingdom?
So I think it really is that shift towards the amount of decarbonisation that we're seeing in the UK has gone very quickly. So we are going to have no coal left on the system by 2025. We are hoping to operate a zero carbon grid by that time. And all the things that have to happen to facilitate that working is the transition we're talking about. So it's all the platforms, it's the regulation, it's the investment, it's the involvement of startups. All of these things, it is happening. So it really is changing the way we see how energy works, honestly.
So when we are going through that kind of paradigm shift, obviously the emergence of new technologies has a lot to do with that as well. So what do you think is the quintessential next generation technology that's going to play a major role in the energy space?
So I think it comes back to data, actually, from today's discussions. it comes down to visibility of what's happening in the grid. So for most network operators, I think around the world, there's a difficulty in seeing down into the system. So even distribution network companies might not know where all the solar panels are, for example, or where all the electric vehicles are and where they might charge. But once you have insight into what they're doing, when they're doing it, when they might do it, you can start forecasting it. Then suddenly all of this smart system stuff starts becoming exciting and interesting. And I think we're now on that transition from the old world of kind of centrally planned one-way power flows, active generation and passive consumers. We're now going to a world where it's fully dynamic on both sides, and the data that will enable that is very exciting.
That's very, very exciting indeed. So before we wrap up this interview, do you have any thoughts or comments you would like to share with our viewers?
Sure. I mean, all to say is that I've really enjoyed my time here at BIXPO. I'm looking forward to exploring Seoul for a couple of days after this. And it seems like Korea is making amazing progress in this space, so please keep up the good work.
Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time
That was
and coming
fun.
on the show.